Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulullah. We continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's The Jewels of the Qur'an, Jawahir al-Qur'an, and we have reached Surah Al-Mu'mineen, the believers, and Imam Al-Ghazali chose 29 verses, 29 jewels from this particular surah. The immediate theme that we will be reading about is creation, and it begins by mentioning the how the human being was created. So the first verse, but this is really verse number 12. But the first one mentioned here is, "Verily, we created man from an extract of clay. Then we placed him as a sperm drop." We said this is the nutfa. Allahu Alam, we talk about a fertilized egg, a zygote, rather than simply a sperm drop. When you talk about the notion of qarar, istaqarrat, maybe that's when the fertilization of the ovum takes place in the fallopian tract, and the zygote attached to the wall of the womb, which is ready really by that time. And from that moment, it grows and it takes shape, as we will read. Then we made this drop a clot. Then we made the clot a shapeless lump. Then we made the shapeless lump bones. Then we clothed the bones with flesh. After that, we produced him another creature. Another creature in Arabic would be مخلوق آخر. This is خلقا آخر. It is simply referring to another phase. يتخلق simply goes through biological phases. So that's because another creature would be problematic. So blessed be God, the best of creators. After this you'll surely die, then on the day of judgment you'll certainly be raised up. Let's basically think about or discuss, comment on the creation story here. The human being was created from, as we have read before that, from dust, from clay. Okay. But the issue is that this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who created the human being from clay, from earth, min hama'in masnoon. Ultimately, all the verses talk about creating the human being from earth. And just in case you have a more also vivid aspect from a different context in the Quran. لما خلقت بيدي. Although the wider context was about the Satan refusing to prostrate to Adam alayhi salam. Nevertheless, the phrase that I would like to highlight is لما خلقت بيدي. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam alayhi salam. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He created Adam, then definitely He created Adam. And then the offspring of Adam alayhi salam continues until today. And that's exactly what you see. We know also that ever since Darwin brought about the evolution, his story. He went on a ship called the Beagle. He traveled to different parts of the world. He went to South America. So his observations led him to believe that there was an evolution. Simply the same species, birds having different sizes of their beaks. Now, does that create a different? Does that support evolution? A friend of mine, quite funny, a colleague, a lady asked him, "Where are you from?" And in Jerusalem, there are neighborhoods. Where you cannot tell whether the person is Palestinian or not. And he said that he was from Abu Tor. That's really immediately south of the old city of Jerusalem. And geographically, the highest place of that of the mountain, moving westward, really at the same time. The neighborhood, so it's a mixed neighborhood, but it's not really mingled. Like the Palestinian neighborhood ends and the Jewish neighborhood begins. So he said he's from Abu Tor, and he knew immediately why she was asking him. And she asked him, "What's your name?" He said, "Zakaria," and that's really doesn't tell much. So she wanted to know all these questions, and why I'm mentioning this story is because he has a very large nose. And he's simply it doesn't bother him, but really he found it very funny, and he told her, "You don't have exclusive monopoly on large noses." Now, that does not create another species that human being, and that does not say that there is evolution. That's very clear, and we are going to speak more scientifically. This is an anecdote. Now, the story of evolution. They speak in what's supposed to be scientific literature, like the Nature magazine, Science, and we'll be mentioning probably others. They speak about the lineage of the human being, and this lineage, we are considered. Our name is Homo sapiens, Sapiens from sapere in Latin and Italian, and it's about knowledge really. And the one before us is the Neanderthal. The one before that is the Homo erectus, meaning the human being, the standing up, the erectus. The one before that is the Homo habilis. I would, based on what they how they depict him, shorty. And later on, in scientific literature, he was dismissed as an ancestor. Okay, and there was a discovery of some bones, incomplete bones, and they were named Lucy, and they immediately start to paint of the fragments of the pieces of bones. They drew, and all of those ancestors, they are painted human beings, really. Being this is science fiction, really, because they paint them more like apes, never like human beings. Ultimately, that story collapsed, and the French scientific magazine Science V Life came. There was a title, "Adieu, Lucy," "Adieu, Goodbye, Lucy," in 1999, in May 1999. "Goodbye, Lucy." That story didn't make sense scientifically. And there is an assumption in that lineage that at one point we have had, like it's is it the missing link, but it's an imaginary ancestor for both the human beings and the chimps, okay, the chimpanzees. It did not exist. If you need a scientific reference, check out basically HC-LCA. But now it did not exist. That link did not exist. Now, between chimps and that link, that ancestor, let's assume that ancestor does exist. And I definitely hope that you understand why I'm spending so much time on this issue, because it's a major, the theory of evolution is really a major issue that Muslims need to educate themselves about it in this, rather than accepting the theory of evolution and start reinterpreting the Qur'an to fit into that frame. Just think about it like logically, okay? And one way of thinking about this, assume that the that common ancestor for both the in the let's rather than saying what to call this ancestor, there is no need for a name, but think of this ancestor as that ancestor must have a brain. Must have a brain. Otherwise, how you are going to account for a human brain, which generally the scientific literature they speak about. I say generally because I will come back to this in a couple of minutes, inshallah. Generally, they speak about 100 billion neurons in the brain. And that's for the human beings. For the chimpanzees, they have about 28, just a little bit less, 28 billion neurons. So how could this ancestor have offspring, both the human beings and the chimps, or at least the beginning of the human family, if you will, that lineage? How could it be that it would lead to 100 billion amongst Homo sapiens and 28? It's 33 for gorillas, by the way. Now I will include a different story. A scientist from South America. She got, of course, it must be that those men donated their brains before their death. She got 4 male brains, a homogeneous solution. She measured the number of neurons and she came up with the number 85 billion, that human beings have 85 billion rather than 100 billion. But that's okay, that's science. I just have no problem with that. The problem is that she did not stop at that which is scientific. Now she ventured into explaining why human beings have 85 billion neurons and gorillas have about one third of that, approximately. She said because human beings discovered how to cook food and get more calories by cooking food. So the assumption is that we did not have 85 billion neurons until we have discovered how to cook food, and then our brains jump to that magical number. Okay. And my there was a conference in Houston, Texas, and I did say that if we introduce cooked food to gorillas, are they going to have their brains expand in terms of the number of neurons from that 33? The number is probably even less in the writing of that scientist from South America. Are they going to increase the number of neurons in their brains? Or if human beings stop eating cooked food, because there is all these fashionable diets. One day you talk about vegetarians, the next you talk about vegans, and then you talk about keto. Then you talk about today the new fashion is to eat raw, no cooked food. Does it mean because they eat raw like gorillas, they are going to lose their brain in the sense of lose these neurons until they go back to eating cooked food? So one can see that there is inconsistency, and there is no direct lineage. When they spoke about this lineage that I've mentioned, they used to speak earlier. The earliest they spoke about 185,000 years. Then the number jumped to 300,000, then 500,000, I think this is in southern part of England, but then it jumped to 750. Then it jumped to about 3 million. Then there is that's the in Kenya, and then in China you talk about some 6 million or even more. So rewriting, now there is no direct lineage. It looks like a tree, and all these images, of course, they, as I said earlier, they painting them as closer to apes rather than human beings. I cannot really express enough. Really, I cannot really speak enough about this subject, but let's put it this way: it is Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. God created the human being. This is not really a literal. It's not a literal understanding of the Quranic text. It's basically that science did not come up with a solid theory about the about their findings. If it's really the skull of a human being, then it's the skull of a human being. Because even today, our skulls have different shapes, different sizes. Enough for these verses. But they were intended also to say the moment you have birth, it ends. These verses, they end up with death. You have birth, and then there is death. After this, you will surely die. And this is really the most important. It's okay. It's the inevitable end. You cannot live for forever. You cannot live for even extended periods beyond Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alam. Yeah, people die. They live to maybe 120. Okay, maybe just a little bit more. But that's a rarity, and you will not be in your best shape. And ultimately, still, death is awaiting. Death is death shapes our life also, because we always live and function with in the shadow of death. It's everywhere, and many years ago I spoke with a marketing somebody who's working in marketing, and he told me that the ads, the advertisement, typically they use either sexuality or death to sell. So, for example, if there was an ad for a Volvo car, and they show that it has an extra steel beam, like an arch in the middle of the car. If it flips, it would basically prevent the car from being smashed, and therefore it would protect those who are inside the car, preventing death. Your seat belt, it's about preventing death. It could be less than that. It's damage, injury, but it's about fear of death. It is always there. Now, for Freud, he when he spoke about the phobia associated with with death, when people speak about phobia, when one becomes so terrified of death, the way it would cripple one from functioning or being obsessed with the idea. Um, and that's when you hear about thanatophobia, that's exactly the word for death phobia. For Freud, it would be that that fear, that phobia related to death. It's because of unresolved issue from childhood. Now, does it mean that people who do not have issues from childhood would welcome death? The Not Freud, but there is literature that speaks about how people react to death, and I'm speaking about part of what is written. They said that people who are very religious uh, do not fear death. People might be afraid of something else. There are famous people when they were about to die. They said they reflected about their own fear. Let's say David Hume, who was considered an atheist, but the moment he was dying, if you will, he said, "I am in flames." Why is this expression? There are those who said that they will land in hellfire. I'm talking about Western famous people from the West, political leaders, intellectuals, politicians. So death is there. Okay. ثم إنكم بعد ذلك لميتون. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he when he spoke about these phases of the growth of the fetus, that ultimately when the human being becomes uh, what he or she is, you have that beautiful phrase there, فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. So this khalq has husn, has beauty. And then there will be resurrection. On the day of judgment, you'll be resurrected. So this life, to be the fact that you are here, that you are living, that you are listening, that you are seeing. We'll get back to the idea of hearing and listening, but we'll inshallah postpone this to the next session. We still have to also speak about the olive oil. وشجرة تخرج من طور سيناء تنبت بالدهن وصبغ للآكلين. And then we'll speak about the senses in the next group of verses. هو الذي أنشأ لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون. So inshallah we'll in the next session I'll try to summarize and continue with these 29 verses from Surah Al-Mu'minin. Until then, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.